Hi, I'm David Stein, host of the podcast Money for the Rest of Us, and this is a video tutorial of the spreadsheet, Am I Saving Enough to Retire? I'm going to go over the assumptions of the spreadsheet, how it works, and then at the very end I'll show some adjustments you can make to customize the spreadsheet to your particular situation. The six basic assumptions are: first, cell B7, what is the expected annual rate of return for your investment portfolio? So this would be the average return over the life of your saving period. In this case, I've used 6%. If you listen to episode 9 of Money for the Rest of Us, what investment rate of return can you expect? I laid out a case of why I expect investment returns to be on the low side over the next 10 years. But if you're in your 20s, you're investing for 20 or 30 years, you might have a little higher assumption. And at the very end, I'll talk about one challenge with these type of spreadsheets where when you choose a specific rate of return. But let's go to the next assumption. Assumption 2 would be, what is your current savings balance, including your 401k plan, individual retirement accounts, checking accounts, or anything you have in your nest egg? What is that total dollar amount? In this case, we've used $50,000. How much are you saving annually, including company matches? And so what's the total amount of new savings entering your investment portfolio? In this case, we use $15,000. The next assumption 4, what percent will that savings amount increase each year? So if you're saving $15,000 this year, if you look down here, year 2, we're saving $15,450. In other words, it went up 3%. And the spreadsheet automatically adjusts that savings amount, increases each year by what the percentage you put there in assumption number 4. I'll show in a few minutes that you can actually customize that. Next is, what percent of your portfolio will you spend in your first year of retirement? One of the main reasons I did this particular spreadsheet was to show, all right, here's 20 years from now, here's how much I'm going to save or have saved based on a particular rate of return, and here's how much I can spend if I retire that year, both in that year's dollars but also in current dollars. And I'll show what I mean by that in a minute. But generally, in order to calculate that, we need to assume, okay, what percent of our portfolio will we spend in that first year of retirement? In this case, I've used 4%. Perhaps you use 3%. And using anything more than 4% is a little aggressive. Conventional wisdom is you spend 4% in your first year of retirement and then adjust each year after that for inflation. And then finally, the final assumption would be 6. What is your expected rate of inflation? The annualized rate of inflation each year. I use 2.5% here. You could be a little more dire, use 3%. But the whole point of the spreadsheet is to actually play around with these assumptions to see, all right, what would happen if inflation was 5% on average for the next 20, 25 years? We'll see that even with a 2.5% inflation rate, that can have a huge impact in terms of the value of your portfolio as expressed in today's dollars. So how does the spreadsheet work then? Let me just pull this down so we can freeze our column so you can see. What the spreadsheet does is you have let me do it this way. It goes down for 50 years. So I didn't put the year of the calendar, but if you are in your 20s, let's say you're 25, and you want to see the impact of these assumptions up here, if you continued for 25 years and you wanted to retire when you were 50, so right here. So you're beginning a balance in your 25th year of savings, so you'd be 50. Given these specific returns up here, 6%, you start with 50,000, you're putting 15,000 in the first year and adjusting it. So 25 years from now, if you adjust that amount, you save that $15,000 by the inflation rate of 2.5%, you would save $30,000 that year, and your investment gain that year would be $78,000. So the overall balance of your portfolio would be $1.3 million. Now, here's the interesting thing. Because we're assuming a rate of inflation, even though your portfolio would be worth $1.3 million 25 years from now, in today's dollars, in other words, if it was today, it would only be worth $762,000. In other words, you'd only have $762,000 of purchasing power in today's dollars. And that kind of allows you to say, all right, yeah, I know I'm going to be a millionaire in 25 years, but really, if I reflect that in what that money's worth today, it'd only be worth $762,000. That becomes important here in column K. And column L. Column K says, all right, given I have $1.3 million, how much could I spend annually if I retired that year? So 25 today, in 25 years I'll be 50. I could spend $55,000 or 4% in that first year of the $1.3 million. And then that $55,000 could be adjusted for the inflation rate. But in today's dollars, that $55,000 would only be $30,000. And so you can say in your mind, all right, if I followed those assumptions and I waited 25 years, if I retired in 25 years, I had $1.3 million, but only $762,000 in today's dollars, I could only spend $30,000, or I'd have the purchasing ability of $30,000 in that given year. I hope that makes sense, because they get really confusing when you talk about today's dollars versus inflation. But just think to yourself, could I live on $30,000 today with all my expenses? If you could, then the assumptions you assumed in the spreadsheet would work out very well for you. If you find that, no, my family lives on $50,000, and given my current rate of savings, I'm only able to have purchasing power for $30,000 in today's dollars, then you'll need to save more. And then you can sort of play around. So maybe you save $25,000 a year. And then that'll adjust. We'll go ahead and back to what would be the impact of that. There, after 25 years, you'd have $1.9 million. In the ending balance would be $2.1 million. In today's dollars, that 2.1 is actually 1.1 million. You could spend $86,000 in retirement, but adjusting it for inflation, that'd be about $47,000. So closer to the $50,000 is that what you spent. Now, this doesn't talk about Social Security or anything. It's just looking at what's the impact of inflation on my ability to spend in the future and on the value of my current portfolio given different inflation rates. Now, here's a couple adjustments you can make. First off, and I describe them right here, you can add any amount here in column F, or just something that happened. Let's say an inheritance, and you know at some point your parents are going to die, maybe 20 years from now, and you're going to get $300,000, kind of a one-time windfall. You would put that right there, and that would impact all the assumptions. And let's just go down and look. The impact of that, year 25, what would be the impact of having that? You would have $2.5 million at the end of 25 years when you're 50, and that would be worth $1.4 million today. You could spend $103,000, or equivalent in today's dollars of $57,000. So that's one adjustment you can make. One time, if you win the lottery, you can put the money in there. If you want to bank your retirement on living the lottery, you can also put a one-time expense. Let's say that $300,000, you decide you're going to spend $200,000 of that and go on a spending spree and go buy a Rolls Royce with your inheritance. The spreadsheet will automatically adjust for that. It doesn't matter. You don't have to put a negative or positive. It'll adjust either way, but it'll show the impact then of that particular change. Now, the other adjustment you can make is in column D, this annual savings. If you recall, we started out saving $25,000 here. It adjusted for whatever increase you put, 3%. But let's say you really are expecting a big raise 5 years from now, and you're just going to do a one-time step up of your savings. So instead of saving $28,000 that year, $29,000, you're going to start saving $40,000 in 6 years out, because you got some debt that you're going to have paid off, so you'll be able to contribute to more to savings. You just put that $40,000 there, and from then on, it adjusts the spreadsheet. Now, if you're going to do additional assumptions, and you want to do various iterations, you want to get rid of that $40,000, all you really need to do is you need to copy the cell formula above and paste it back, and it'll automatically go back to where you had. Or you can save a different version of the spreadsheet. So the whole idea is to be able to see, well, how much am I saving? Am I saving enough to be able to retire in whatever year? Perhaps you want to retire in 15 years. What's the impact of that? How much could you spend as you go out 15 years? What if you want to wait 30 years or 40 years? All kinds of assumptions you can play with. I firmly believe the best way to visualize savings is to look at the hard numbers and perhaps sometimes ugly numbers, depending on how much you currently have saved. The one huge caveat is this number right here, the expected rate of return of 6%. This assumes you earn 6% each and every year. Perhaps you put that 7% there. The problem is that's not what happens in the real world. Sometimes the markets go up, sometimes the market goes down, and when the pattern of return has a huge impact. Let me give you an example of that. This amount here in year 25, as you have $2.1 million, as you go out for the years, you can see how much that grows each year. What happens in year 25 if the market actually falls 15% or your portfolio falls 10%? That's going to have a very different impact. Now, in order to model that, we'd have to do simulation analysis, and the spreadsheet would be much more complicated. But this is just a good back of the envelope, a little more complex than back of the envelope, but type calculation to say, all right, if I did earn 6% annualized, recognize that the pattern of returns will be very different, particularly the impact of those last 3 or 4 years, 5 years of retirement or before retirement. If the market's fallen off, that could have a devastating impact, which is one reason as you move closer to retirement, you want to invest more conservatively. So that is the money for the rest of us. Am I saving enough to retire spreadsheet? If you just happen to find the video, if you want to get the spreadsheet, you can go to moneyfortherestofus.net/save.html. I'll put that link this will be a YouTube video, so you can click that link there, or you can click the link on the screen. But moneyfortherestofus.net, if you go to the menu of that website and my website there, I'll have it'll be in the menu bar. You'll be able to find the spreadsheet. Any questions, please email me at jd@jdavidstein.com, or you can ping me on Twitter @jdstein. You can listen to the podcast Money for the Rest of Us at moneyfortherestofus.net, or it's available on iTunes and Stitcher. Thanks.